You know, there's one thing so many of us take lightly. But to me, a doctor who has spent over 30 years working with patients with high blood pressure, it is the very foundation of healing, and that is sleep. When was the last time you truly slept a full 7 hours without waking up tired? I'm not asking that just for conversation, because when you don't get enough sleep, your body doesn't truly rest the way you think it does. Instead, your stress hormone, cortisol, spikes. Your blood vessels tighten, your heart has to work harder, and your blood pressure quietly creeps up all day long. I once had a patient, 56 years old. He took his medication faithfully, ate carefully, walked every morning, yet his blood pressure stayed unpredictable. So I asked him, "How many hours do you sleep a night?" He smiled sadly and said, "About 4 or 5, doctor." We didn't change his medication. We focused only on fixing his sleep. 3 months later, his blood pressure was steadier than we ever expected. You see, sleep isn't just rest. When you sleep deeply, your brain cleans itself. Your blood vessels relax. Your nervous system resets. But when you sleep less than 6 hours a night, there is almost no sustainable way to control your blood pressure long term. Now let me ask you to imagine this. If every night you gave your heart just 1 extra hour of real rest, wouldn't it feel lighter? And I believe you already know the answer. After sleep, there is another medicine I often call God's free prescription. No insurance, no pharmacy, no copay. All you need is a decent pair of shoes and a little patience. That medicine is walking. So many of you tell me, "Doctor, I'm old now. Walking makes me tired." I understand. I truly do. But I have also witnessed quiet miracles, born from nothing more than slow, steady steps. One of my female patients, 62 years old, was terrified of exercise. Her blood pressure stayed around 160 despite taking 2 medications. I gently told her, "We're not running. We're not training hard. Just walk. 30 to 45 minutes a day, like a peaceful stroll in the park." 3 months later, she came back smiling and said, "Doctor, my blood pressure really came down." Walking doesn't just burn calories. It helps your body release excess salt and water. It reduces insulin resistance. It softens stiff blood vessels. And more importantly, it calms the mind. Because some days what wears you down isn't in your muscles. It's in your thoughts. Science shows that regular walking alone can lower blood pressure by 8 to 20 points. Nearly the same effect as a blood pressure medication. So imagine this. Every step you take today is one step farther away from tomorrow's illness. And the question I leave you with is, how many steps have you taken for your heart today? Now, let me take you somewhere very familiar. Not a hospital, not a clinic, but your own kitchen. Would you believe that many stubborn cases of high blood pressure I've seen over 30 years started with the bottle of cooking oil next to the stove? I once treated a 68-year-old man, very disciplined, low salt, low sugar, walked every day, yet his blood pressure stayed high. I asked, "What oil do you cook with?" He answered confidently, "Vegetable oil, doctor. The label says it's heart healthy." But when I looked closely, it was refined soybean oil. I told him gently, "You're not cooking for your heart. You're cooking for silent inflammation inside your blood vessels." Industrial seed oils rich in omega-6, like corn oil, soybean oil, refined sunflower oil, disturb the body's balance. They cause chronic inflammation. They damage vessel walls. They slowly make arteries stiff, and once the arteries become stiff, blood pressure has nowhere to retreat. You know what's most heartbreaking? Many people take omega-3 supplements to balance things out, but they keep the same unhealthy oil in their kitchen. It's like mopping your floor clean while leaving the door wide open for mud to be tracked in every single day. Tonight, I want you to walk into your kitchen and look at the bottle of oil you're using. You are not just cooking a meal, you are cooking the future of your blood vessels. And sometimes, a very small change can save an entire life. You know what breaks my heart the most these days? I'm seeing high blood pressure in younger and younger patients. And when I trace their eating habits back to the root, the biggest common factor is always the same: processed food. One of my patients, 59 years old, once said to me, "Doctor, I don't even eat that much. Just a sandwich, some sausages, and a pack of cookies in the afternoon." Sounds light, doesn't it? But when I explained how much hidden salt, preservatives, and refined palm oil were in those foods, he sat in silence for a long time. Processed food doesn't just raise blood pressure. It disrupts blood sugar, damages blood vessels. Fatty liver develops, and the body sinks into a state of chronic silent inflammation. The danger is you don't feel the pain right away. It happens quietly, slowly, day by day. Have you noticed? The foods that come in wrappers, tear open packages, and heat up in minutes are usually the ones your body pays for over many long years. I'm not asking you to live in misery or abandon everything you enjoy. I simply hope that before you put something in your shopping cart, you pause for 1 second and ask, is this feeding me or is it slowly wearing me down? Because sometimes the road back to health doesn't start in the pharmacy. It starts in the grocery store aisle. Have you ever said to yourself, it's just one small slice of cake, doctor? What harm could it do? I only drink one soda a day. I hear that almost every week in my clinic. One of my patients, 64 years old, very gentle, very disciplined, took her medication, walked daily, but her blood pressure stayed difficult to control. When I asked about sweets, she smiled. "I don't eat much, doctor. Just a small piece of cake after dinner for fun." That small piece of cake every day for 10 years. You see, sugar doesn't just raise blood sugar. It fattens the liver, inflames the blood vessel walls, stiffens the arteries, and quietly pushes blood pressure higher, little by little, without you realizing it. In my clinical experience, when a patient cuts out sugar completely for just 21 days, what I often see isn't only a drop in blood pressure. It's clearer mornings, calmer heartbeat, less fatigue. And most importantly, they begin to believe again that real change is possible. Now imagine this. Every spoonful of sugar you refuse today is one burden lifted from your heart tomorrow. So maybe the real question isn't, can you give up sugar? Maybe it's, do you love your heart enough to stop? So many patients tell me, "Doctor, I have high blood pressure. I'm afraid to exercise. What if my heart pounds too hard? What if my pressure spikes?" And I always smile, gently shake my head and say, no, the most dangerous thing for a person with high blood pressure is not moving at all. Walking opens the door for your body to breathe. But real exercise, that's what makes the heart stronger, the muscles sturdier, and your metabolism come back to life. One of my male patients, 61 years old, spent his days moving from the couch to the TV, from the TV to the dinner table. High blood pressure, high blood sugar, constant exhaustion. I didn't ask him to lift heavy weights. I simply said, this week, every day, lift 2 water bottles up and down 10 times. That's all. 3 months later, he came back with brighter eyes and said something I will never forget. "Doctor, I feel like I've come back to life." You see, muscle is where sugar and fat get absorbed. Muscle is one of the most natural blood pressure medicines your body has. When you have more muscle, your heart doesn't have to struggle as much. Blood flows more smoothly. Your vessels become more flexible, and your blood pressure begins to come down gently. Now imagine this. Every time you lift your arms, stand up, sweat just a little. You are teaching your body how to heal itself again. You don't need to become an athlete. You just need to stop letting your body fall asleep. Do you ever get leg cramps at night? Unusual heart palpitations? Days when you suddenly feel anxious, restless, or unable to sleep? Many people think that's just old age. But in my clinic, more than half of those patients are deficient in magnesium. I remember a 70-year-old woman whose blood pressure remained stubborn despite taking her medication properly. She kept telling me, "Doctor, every night my calves cramp and my heart pounds so hard." When we checked her micronutrients, her magnesium level was clearly low. We simply supplemented the right dose, the right way. A few weeks later, she returned and said, For the first time in a long time, I slept through the whole night. You know, magnesium is like the quiet gatekeeper of the cardiovascular system. It helps blood vessels relax. It stabilizes the heartbeat. It calms the nervous system. When you lack it, your heart is forced to work in a state of constant tension, day and night. The truth is, after the age of 50, the body's ability to absorb minerals declines significantly. The soil is poorer than it used to be. Our food is no longer as rich in micronutrients as it once was. So eating until full does not always mean eating with enough nourishment. I want you to understand this gently. We don't always need stronger medication. Sometimes the body is simply whispering that it's missing a few small building blocks it needs to repair itself. And magnesium, very well, might be one of those missing bricks. Have you ever noticed your heart racing from just one phone call? Or your blood pressure jumping after an argument? Or a sleepless night filled with worry? One of my patients, 58 years old, worked for years in a high-pressure environment. He ate carefully, exercised regularly, took his medication exactly on time, yet his blood pressure was still rebellious. One day he said to me, "Doctor, I feel like I'm always stretched tight like a violin string." And that was the key. When you live under prolonged stress, cortisol stays elevated. Your body holds on to salt, holds on to water. Your blood vessels tighten. Belly fat accumulates. Sleep becomes disturbed. Everything at once begins pushing your blood pressure upward. You may eat right. You may exercise correctly. But if your mind is constantly tense, your body never truly heals. I often tell my patients this: stress is not weakness. Stress is a medical condition, and it deserves to be treated. Sometimes simply learning to pause, to breathe slowly, to say no to a few unnecessary burdens, your blood pressure will begin to soften naturally. So I want you to ask yourself one honest question. How long has it been since I allowed myself to slow down? Because some of the most powerful medicine does not live in a prescription bottle. It lives in the way you treat your own life each day. Have you noticed, when you're cooking, how your hand sometimes automatically sprinkles in an extra pinch of salt? No tasting, no thinking, just habit. One of my patients, 65 years old, once told me with confidence, "Doctor, don't worry, I already eat very lightly." But when we sat down and wrote out a full day of his meals together, this is what we found. Bread in the morning had salt, cheese had salt, cold cuts had salt, canned soup had salt, even the dipping sauce at dinner, full of salt. He didn't feel like he ate salty, but the actual sodium intake was far beyond safe limits. You see, our kidneys are naturally very good at eliminating salt, but when the body enters insulin resistance, something extremely common after 50, the kidneys become lazy, salt is retained, water is retained, blood becomes thicker, and the heart must strain harder to pump. I want you to understand something very important. People with high blood pressure do not need to eliminate salt completely, but they absolutely must reduce it. The safe target is under 6 grams of salt per day. But the hardest part isn't the number, it's the habit. Salt is addictive. If you've eaten salty for years, bland food will taste lifeless. But if you reduce gradually for just 2 or 3 weeks, your taste buds will reset. When that happens, if you go back to your old salty food, you'll be surprised how overwhelming it tastes. Now imagine this. Every time you put the salt spoon down just a little earlier, you are softening the walls of your blood vessels just a little more. And sometimes the change that saves your heart begins right at your fingertips while seasoning your food. Have you noticed something else? Many of us drink coffee, drink tea, drink zero sugar soda, but we forget to drink plain water. And then we tell ourselves, "I drink plenty of fluids," but the body does not agree. One of my male patients, 63 years old, had unstable blood pressure for years. Some days it looked perfect. A few days later, it would spike again. So I asked one simple question. On average, how much plain water do you drink each day? He thought for a long time and said, "Maybe 2 glasses. 2 glasses of water for a heart that must pump blood for 24 hours straight. When the body's dehydrated, blood becomes thicker. The heart must pump harder, and blood pressure rises as a consequence. This may not sound like a serious disease, But when it repeats every day, year after year, it becomes a very serious problem. After age 50, our thirst signal becomes weaker. The body still needs water, but it no longer knocks loudly to remind us. So many of us live in a state of chronic, mild dehydration without realizing it. That's why I always tell my patients this one simple line. Don't wait until you're thirsty to drink. Thirst means you're already behind. Now imagine this. Every sip of water you drink today makes your blood slightly thinner, your heart's workload slightly lighter, and your blood vessels slightly more relaxed. And maybe caring for your blood pressure does not begin with medication. Maybe it begins with the glass of water sitting next to you right now. Have you ever heard someone say this to you? Doctor, at this age, we just have to accept being overweight. I hear that often, and every time I gently reply, no. The older we get, the less we should burden the heart. One of my patients, 60 years old, weighs nearly 15 kilograms more than he did when he was young. His blood pressure stays around 150 to 160. He once said to me, Doctor, I don't even eat that much. Why am I still gaining weight? I gently placed my hand on his abdomen and said, the problem isn't just how much you weigh, it's where that weight lives. Belly fat is not just fat, it is a hormonal factory, producing chemicals that increase inflammation, insulin resistance, vessel stiffness, and blood pressure. Every extra inch around the waist is another load placed on the heart. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to become skinny. You don't need to suffer. By losing just 5 to 7% of your body weight, your blood pressure can drop by 10 to 15 points. Not thin, just light enough for your heart to breathe again. I often tell my patients, you don't need to return to your 30-year-old body. You only need to be lighter than yesterday's version of yourself. Just a little. Now imagine this. Every kilogram you release today is 1 kilogram of burden you remove from your heart tomorrow. And sometimes loving yourself does not mean indulging yourself. It means having the courage to change because you deserve to live lighter. And now, I want you to pause for just one moment, not to measure your blood pressure, but to ask yourself one honest question. If not today, then when will I finally change? You have walked through more than half of your life. You have sacrificed for your family, for your children, for your career, for countless responsibilities. But what about your heart? It has beaten without rest for all these years. And today it is asking you for one simple thing. Please take proper care of me. Don't wait until your doctor tells you that your medication must be increased. Don't wait until dizziness, chest pain, or collapse forces you to wake up. Because at that moment, you no longer have a choice. You only have obligation. But right now, you still have the power to decide. You can decide to go to bed 1 hour earlier tonight, to step outside and walk for 10 minutes tomorrow, to drink 1 extra glass of water in the morning, to put the salt spoon down a little sooner. These sound like small things, but those very small things have saved the lives of thousands of my patients over the last 30 years. And I believe they can save your heart too. If this video touched you, even just a little, please subscribe. Please stay here with me, because we are not just talking about health. We are talking about the remaining years of your life.